So the description in on Facebook, my laptop's messing up, and I will fix that later. But this is my very good friend George Lyday from Snohomish, Washington. He actually came and visited me for the week. So very blessed to have him here on the channel, and we're going to talk about your testimony and a little bit about our friendship and how everything came to be. So I'm going to hide the comments. I don't know how to do that. Nope. Oh, well. All right, so let's kick it off and get started. So, George, let's start with how you came to Torah.
How I came to Torah. Well, it was a long and let's just go with a long process. My family has been in this walk for a little over 10 years, probably 11, maybe even starting on 12 years now. And it all started back in 2007 or 8 when my parents actually started going to a Bible study at our church we were going to.
Okay.
It was a little Thursday night Bible study. And how did that go? So they were following the
It's okay.
It was oh man. They were following the kind of church guidelines in this Bible study. It was a Thursday night Bible study. And they started reading Genesis.
Okay.
You know, going through the books of the Bible. And as they started doing that, they wanted to just read the books of the Bible. At least this is what I remember. And as they were doing that, you know, they started getting into Exodus and Leviticus, and it's like, well, why are we doing that?
Right.
So, and through that process, the Bible study kind of became its own little thing. And oddly enough, I can kind of remember being a little kid asking them, what'd you guys talk about on Thursday nights? You know, they'd come back, Emma and I would hang out a little bit. Emma's my sister. And I'd go ahead and ask them, like, what'd you guys learn? And, you know, they'd come back with answers and some interesting stuff. Like, well, one of the first things we learned was the Sabbath.
Okay.
Where
a lot of people start.
It really is. And no, essentially, first commandments.
Yeah.
You shall keep the Sabbath day, keep it holy.
First thing he called holy, too. That's
true. That's very true.
What?
I don't know. So through that process, one of the things we learned was keep the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and that would be the seventh day. With that, you know, we started doing a small Bible study on Saturday, the Shabbat. And our parents went ahead and opened up our house to the fellowship on Thursday nights. With that, we actually stopped being part of the Thursday night Bible study, stopped being part of the church, and actually started doing its own thing. And we continued with both Thursday night and Saturday Bible study.
Okay.
Thursday started kind of being a little more in-depth studies and kind of reaching out on a little bit different topics. But then our Saturday Sabbaths was just kind of learning the basics. It was a long process for us of coming to eating kosher, to figuring out when the Sabbath starts, like sundown to sundown. And it took a long time, probably 4 or 5 years before we actually started learning about Christmas and Easter, all the other holidays.
So y'all started keeping Sabbath and you were still doing Christmas and Easter
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Essentially, it was just a Bible study.
Okay.
Because we were still doing church for a couple years too.
So you were doing Sabbath and church for?
Yeah, we were.
Wow.
Yeah, it got really exhausting. Yeah, it was pretty exhausting. But it came down to the ultimatum of which one should we do?
Right.
And ultimately, we chose the Sabbath. Right move, by the way. So yeah, after we started learning the Sabbath, we went on to kind of the basics of, learning the feast days. It took a long time for us to kind of nail down how to do the feast days and what to do. And, one of the first ones was Sabbath or Passover. Passover was a big one for us. That was the first feast we actually started doing because someone else was actually hosting it. Boy, that was so long ago. And it is not like what we do now because, hopefully we got it nailed down a little bit more now.
Right. Well, it's a growing process like everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't really do Hanukkah all that much anymore, but when we did, we had there's our transition year. We had a Hanukkah tree.
Oh no, that's awesome.
Yeah. We had a transition year of I think that was the same year we gave up Halloween and we gave up Easter, which were really easy for us. Actually, there's one year we even had an Easter, but we were kind of on the fence about it.
Right.
But yeah, it was about 4 or 5 years in, we had a transition year.
Okay.
And then through that process, after giving that stuff up, it was basically just continuing to learn the basics. By this time, I was just getting my driver's license. I was turning 15, 16, and really starting to learn the faith for myself.
Y'all started this when you were really young.
Yeah, I was in junior high.
That's awesome.
I think I was in 7th grade.
That is awesome.
Like the very first little seeds that we started, or that started it all, was in my 7th grade year.
Okay.
I can remember I was in a private Christian school, and all these questions started coming up about Christmas and Easter. And I remember asking my my Bible teacher some of these questions, like, why do we have the tree? Why do we do the eggs? What's the deal with all this stuff? Because, it's not in the scriptures. You don't read anything about it or even a command to do it. So I was asking her, and, she gave the kind of basic Christian answer, like the eggs represent new life.
The fir tree is Christ eternal.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they never die until you cut them down.
Yeah, until you cut them down. That's right. And then burn them.
Yeah.
That was
we actually did that today.
Yeah, we burned 2 Christmas trees.
Yeah.
Burn them idols, man. It was so much more fun.
Yeah. So your family, as of now, has been in it, right at 10 years?
A little over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Probably 11 years.
Incredible. So go on, expound a little bit on a couple things that have happened either before or after you've come to Toro that's strengthened your walk with the Father.
All right. Well, I had a pretty good life. Growing up in a really good Christian home for the beginning years of my life. And I was, I don't want to say sheltered, but I was raised pretty good. It's okay if I get real.
Get real.
Get real. Okay. Well, one of my biggest personal struggles was, as many men do struggle with, is pornography. Was pornography. And that was a whole process in itself on getting hooked. You know, I saw some somewhat inappropriate content as a young kid, and you know, when I was a kid, I didn't really know like what was wrong and what was right about it.
Just more or less curiosity.
Yeah, more or less curiosity. And you know, was actually started getting really bad during my junior high years, when I started having like actual access to computers and the internet. And some of the worst years that I was struggling with it was probably 8th grade to 10th grade. So right as we were starting Torah, my addiction was actually increasing. And eventually I knew that it was starting to become a problem. It was and that it was wrong, and that it was hurting me because, well, for one, I was hiding it. And you know it's bad when you start hiding it. I didn't do a very good job either, because I know my dad caught me a couple times, and eventually the guilt was eating me alive, and I finally reached out for help. Actually, Dad, if you're watching, I asked you for some help, and that was probably one of the hardest days of my life, was telling you about how hard it was. But unfortunately, it didn't end there. You know, a lot like addicts, they tend to stop, think, oh yeah, I got this. This is easy. This is great. I got this. And then, you know, as you start gaining a little bit more trust and access to some of the things, like, oh yeah, I got this under control. Maybe just a sip will be fine. And then goes down the drain.
Right.
And that happened probably 3-4 different times. And as far as my interaction with the Father, with Yahweh, once I realized that it was not stopping on my own, or even with help from the Father, you know, after the 3rd, 4th time, I was dying inside. And I was, a couple nights that year, I was, for weeks, a couple nights a week, I would just cry my eyes out, begging for a way out of this, because I didn't know how. I had no idea how. And
it's hard to get out of that cycle.
It is so hard. It's so hard. And I think I can actually remember saying the words, "Give me something to fight for." Please,
wow.
Please, God, give me something to fight for. Because if I can't do it for myself, then how am I going to do this? Well, I know there's a God, because He showed me. He showed me something to fight for, and that very thing was in our fellowship at the time. There was this really sweet family, like 5 different kids, and the 4 youngest really looked up to me, and I loved them like they were my own brothers and sisters. And I had this profound realization of essentially being a role model for these kids. And that hit me hard. There's one day, I like to listen to a band called For Today, and the vocalist of that band has a couple speaking albums. And on one of the tracks, he was actually talking about the leadership in the church and the issues, and he was actually like calling them out. And one of the examples he started giving was, if there is a pastor of this church, of a church, who is preaching purity and is secretly involved in watching pornography, then he is subjecting his congregation to that sin and to the spirit of pornography.
Wow.
Yeah, he came up with a word, and I think it was a corporate impartation, something big like that. And that just blew my mind, because I immediately connected it to these kids in our own fellowship. And I got to say that probably stopped it right then and there.
So your overcoming pornography wasn't for self. It was a selfless matter in and of the fact that you were concerned with others for what you were doing.
Yeah.
That's, I've heard of other people, overcoming it, but it was more or less just a constant fight, and that's probably one of the coolest ways that I think I've ever heard of somebody kicking that habit or that addiction. It's not a habit; it's an addiction.
Oh yeah,
I know
totally
that I
addiction.
have, and praise the Father that you've overcome that. I know I've done a ton of research on that one topic, and understanding that addiction is the mental equivalent of, it was either heroin or cocaine. It does the same thing to your mind that heroin or cocaine does.
Oh yeah.
So knowing the fact that you've come out of that because of selflessness,
yeah,
shows the reflection of how the Father just worked through that. That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Now, I don't want to say that like I don't struggle with thoughts,
of course,
and stuff,
because you're a guy.
Well, yeah, there's that. However, because of how long I looked at it, and because of how insanely addicted I was to it, that I have to constantly be reminded of my own promise to the Father. With today's entertainment industry, it is so hard to keep a pure mind.
It is everywhere.
It is so incredibly hard.
Even in it is to the extent, even in the places that you think that you're safe from it. Like when I'm not going to go into details, but we were talking about cartoons.
Yeah.
And there's so many subliminal messages in kids' cartoons. It's like, it's just unreal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everywhere.
Yeah. It is absolutely insane. And yeah, having an event like that and having the Father so clearly answer that prayer is definitely something that brought me closer to the Father, made me really appreciate what prayer is, and that he listens. He really does. And a lot of times it doesn't feel like it. But a lot of times when it doesn't feel like he's listening, it's just him saying no.
So before we continue on, is there are a lot of guys out there who are still struggling with this, who can love the Father unconditionally. What would you say to somebody who is still struggling with this, that just for some reason can't find a way out?
That's a tough one, because it's so different for so many different people. Like what my testimony is, I found something to fight for. For someone who's in a leadership position, say you're a teacher, or there's just young kids that look up to you, fight for them. Because as much of an issue that it is for you, there really is a spiritual connection to it. There's two parts to this. The biggest part that got me was the spiritual side, that there is a real spirit behind pornography, and I don't want to subject anyone to that spirit, because I was subjected to it. And,
at a young age as well.
At a very young age.
How old were you when you were first exposed to it?
Well, I'll say it wasn't really pornography. The earliest thing I can remember is I saw a sex ed book in the kids section. Okay. I'm like, Mom, what's this? And well,
that's all she wrote.
Yep. So I had that kind of awkward talk at a very, very early age. Mom, it's not your fault. Just say, if you're watching, it is not your fault.
But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but going back to the spiritual aspect of it.
Yeah. The spiritual aspect, it can affect anyone. It can affect little kids that are around you each and every day if you're a teacher. It can affect your family. One of the biggest things is, guys, if you have sisters, I have a sister too. Hi, Emma. You can subject them to that. Little brothers, little sisters, you want to protect them from that stuff, especially the spiritual aspect, because I don't necessarily know how it works, but I know that some way, somehow, it's pushing that spirit on them. And guys, if you are married, oh my gosh, you fight for your wife. You fight for your wife till death. Hi, Taylor. I am newly engaged, and
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited for that, by the way.
And you should be. You should be.
So, I got to tell you, that is the biggest thing I'm fighting for, is a pure marriage. An absolutely pure marriage. I want my wife one day to be the one and only person I look at, to be the one and only person to have that proper marital relationship with.
Right.
Not a screen. And then the second side is, guys, you have a role in this. Run away. Just as the scriptures say, run away from it.
Flee
from it. If your computer's the addiction or the issue,
Or cell phones.
Or, cell phones.
Now it's more easily accessible because of cell phones.
Stay away from it as much as possible, or get rid of it completely. Get a flip phone if you need to, for crying out loud.
They still sell those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Slight digression.
Get a flip phone, get rid of that computer. I don't know what to tell you. You know, that part is totally on you. You know, if the issue is you're walking by an adult store on your way to work or driving past it, find a different route. For crying out loud, find a different route. You know, that's all. I guess that's all I can say about that.
What helped you was finding something to fight for besides yourself, and just consistent prayer.
Lots of prayer, lots of deep, real prayer. Sometimes it's hard to pray when you're not feeling it.
Ain't that the truth?
But it really does come down. I think the most effective prayer is coming from a place of brokenness. And I came from a deep brokenness. I came from a place of desperation, of desperately wanting to stop, of desperately wanting to finally have a clean conscience.
It's actually interesting you say that, because one of the last people that I interviewed, Ben Cohen, hey Ben, if you're watching, he even stated fighting this addiction, you have to want it. Yeah. In order to get out, you have to want it.
That is so true. I wanted it to stop so badly that, like I said before, weeks at a time and almost every night, I would secretly just, because Scripture says to go to a secret and quiet place to pray. And literally that was just my room. I would bawl into my pillow. Usually after the act was committed, I'm like, oh God, Father, please for the.
Well, after all that, and we're not trying to expound on all of this.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a spirit of shame.
Oh my
afterwards.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
So anybody that is watching, or anybody that will watch here in the future, understand that, you know, you're not alone in this. You know, there are other people fighting this battle as well, and have fought this battle. Let's continue on. I wanted to talk a little bit about our friendship.
Okay.
And kind of expound on that. Everybody who has subscribed or knows anything about Torah United in depth knows that I started this channel to kind of help reunite the body of Messiah. There's too much division going on.
Absolutely.
Way too much division. There's not enough community, and there's too much division going on over silly topics, and topics that have nothing to do with salvation. And so George and I are actually an interesting friendship. For one thing, we met on Facebook real quick 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
2.5.
Okay.
Maybe 2.5.
We met through Facebook, through, if anybody has watched any of the other interviews, Brian Newman was the first one that I interviewed. We actually met through Hebrew Hearts. And as you heard at the beginning of this interview, George is from Snohomish, Washington, which is about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Seattle. And I live in Greenville, South Carolina. We are 3,000 miles apart
man.
from one another, and we only get to see each other about once a year, on average. And when it comes to the controversial topics, George and I don't agree on almost anything.
It's true.
But
it's pineapple.
It is.
I had to get you a crack up on screen once.
The little inside joke there. I'm not going to say who is who. One of us believes in flat Earth. One of us believes in the globe. So, with that being said, we have a mutual agreement, just for joke's sake, that it's a pineapple because both of us have watched SpongeBob in the past. I hope y'all laugh at that.
Oh my
anyway,
gosh.
So moving on, we don't agree hardly on any of the controversial topics. We keep different calendars. One of us is a flat earther, one of us is a globe. But my point with all of this is arguing over all of this stuff is absolutely pointless.
Oh, it's so silly.
You can still have fellowship and completely disagree.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who aren't seeking fellowship, seek fellowship. Please
Absolutely.
Seek fellowship. Even if it means you have to travel. We travel 3,000 miles to see one another. It is not easy. So for those of you out there, who are like, oh, it's 45 minutes away, it's an hour away. I'm traveling 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
Just to have fellowship.
Yeah, first time I came over, we traveled, 4 hours?
Yeah, we went to go see the Exodus Road Band. Any of the Exodus Road Band who is watching, I see some of you are. Hey, guys. We went to go travel the first time when you came. We went to go see them. And it's 3.5 hours one way. And, they travel a lot because of the band, so they understand, a lot about the traveling.
Oh, yeah.
So any of you out there who don't have fellowship and can travel, get out there, go find fellowship. If you don't agree on stuff, that's okay. We're all trying to work out our walk with fear and trembling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So George, I truly appreciate you being on tonight, dude, and for doing the very first live video. For those of you who have not done so yet, check out our YouTube channel, Torah United.
Absolutely.
Like it if you like this video and subscribe. We love all of y'all. Shalom.
Nighty night.